Welcome to the Liminal Witch podcast, a space for those who walk the edges, dance in the thresholds, and find magic in the spaces between. I'm Summer Starr. I'm a liminal witch, a ritual goods crafter, and I'm an intuitive reader here in Salem, Massachusetts. If you've ever felt like your practice doesn't fit neatly into one category or tradition, or if you feel pulled to the provocative edges of the unknown, then this podcast is meant for you. In today's episode, since this is episode 1, I'm going to talk about liminality at a high level, what it means in magic and witchcraft, how it shows up in my practice, and why embracing these spaces can shift everything about how we experience power and transformation. Liminality is something you feel before you name it, that crisp yet really heavy feeling in the air at twilight, the restless energy of standing at a crossroads, the way the world kind of seems to hold its breath in those moments before a storm. If you've ever felt caught between paths or belief systems or various versions of yourself, you kind of already understand liminal spaces. They exist everywhere, in time and place and energy, in our own personal transformations. And for witches, they're some of the most powerful places that we can work, in my opinion. The word liminal comes from the Latin limen, which means threshold. But it's not just a doorway. It's the pause before we step through the doorway. That moment when you're kind of no longer where you were, but you're not yet where you're going. It can be used to describe states of existence, time, places that simply exist as a point of change. So examples, this could be physical spaces, crossroads, caves, shorelines, graveyards, abandoned buildings, doorways again, temporal spaces, so twilight, dawn and dusk, the dark or the new moon, Samhain, the shifting of seasons, so going from winter to spring and fall to winter. They can also exist in altered states of consciousness, when you're meditating or doing journey work or trance work or astral travel, dream work, any of those things, those are all liminal spaces. And you could also really experience liminality during personal transitions. So if you're going through a period of deep grief or a period of personal rebirth, those raw, uncertain times when we're no longer who we were, but we're not quite yet who we're becoming, those are all liminal spaces. Even this podcast is a liminal space. So right now, you've stepped out of your physical world and entered this place that kind of only exists between waves of silence and signal or frequency or whatever word I should insert there. Please pick the right word. Hopefully you know what I mean. But yeah, this is even a liminal space, this podcast. Liminality is deeply tangible in magic and witchcraft. So, a lot of practitioners, whether they be just spiritual people or hardcore witchcraft practitioners, everybody kind of dabbles in something from the list that I just mentioned. But you don't have to be a witch or even spiritual to feel the pull of these spaces. They just kind of exist everywhere in every form. And I could spend hours in an episode all in itself just talking about the variety of liminal spaces that you can enter. Throughout history, usually through myth and folk tales, a lot of these spaces have been described as unpredictable or eerie or filled with spirits and tricksters and strange energies. And in a lot of cases, that reputation is true. Caves, crossroads, misty shorelines, shadowed forests, they're all known for otherworldly activity. They're these places where the boundaries between realms blur, spirits wander more freely, magic tends to feel stronger and stranger, and sometimes it's quite volatile. But that doesn't mean you should fear these spaces. Liminal spaces are not places of control, they're places of flux, and that's exactly what makes them so powerful in witchcraft. Magic is about transformation, so it's about shifting reality and breaking patterns, working with forces beyond physical, and that liminal spaces amplify all of that. Take a crossroads, a classic liminal space, known as a meeting space for spirits and powerful magical workings. You're between choices, you're between paths. It's literally a crossroads. That makes it an ideal place for spell work that's related to choices or transition and working with deities or spirits tied to change. You can also think about twilight, dusk and dawn, all those times when light and darkness weave together and nature's kind of changing shifts. Those liminal hours have always been recognized for their heightened psychic energy, making them ideal spaces for divination and spirit communication, hedge crossing. In witchcraft, liminality isn't just about location, though. It's about learning to sit inside that space of transition, to really let it move through you, to work with that pause before something becomes real, to really sit in that deep energy, that intense energy that happens in that shift between here and there, between this and that. In my practice and with my clients, I tap into the potential of these spaces to support deep transformations and shadow work. One thing I really love about liminality is its ability to be a catalyst for change, especially when doing really deep transformative work. Because liminal spaces, they don't just exist out in the world, we also carry them within us. And sometimes that tension that we feel in these spaces, it's not because of what's there. It's not these scary stories and these, scary creatures, but it's because of what we actually bring with us. I mean, we're human. We like structure. We like predictability. We like control. We like to know where we stand. And liminal spaces strip all of that away. They really require surrender. You have to just sit there in your uncertainty. You have to really listen and tune in instead of dictating, and you have to really step beyond what you know into something that's completely undefined. And that can be unsettling as hell. That can be really scary. Again, we're human. We like to cling to what's familiar, even when it doesn't serve us. And we all know about this. I probably have a PhD in this. We have self-doubt. We have negative self-talk. We have these old wounds and these beliefs or in these relationships that tell us that we're small or we're incapable or we're not enough. And even when it hurts, it's predictable. And sometimes that predictability feels way safer than changing. Using these liminal spaces to inspire change, it's a zero BS game. It's going to challenge you. It's going to make you confront what you've outgrown, but aren't leaving behind. It forces you to stand in the unknown and really decide whether you're going to step forward or remain with what's predictable but stagnant. And if you feel drawn to liminal spaces, if you come alive in that hush before a storm, that really static and charged energy, and you could smell the ozone and that space right before a big storm hits, and you like to steep in the glow of twilight, and you're drawn to the pull of an untouched path, or you feel the intense power when you're looking into a dark forest, you're already sampling those liminal energies. You're already tapping into that. And for me, liminality isn't just a concept. It's a practice that's woven into everything I do. It shapes my spell work and my divination and the way I even interact with the world. I lean into these really intense spaces in nature and elemental transitions. I do a lot of underworld and deep cave journeying, and there's no more intense space for me than going into that deep cave where it is silent and there is no other sound besides my thoughts. And let me tell you, you are going to hear some things that you do not want to face and hear, but that's why you're there, right? Is to deal with that and to really access that opportunity for transformation and change. And you wouldn't hear that unless you put yourself into that situation, because when we're above ground and in our comfortable environment, there's a lot of static and a lot of noise that distracts you from hearing those honest truths. And it can be scary as hell. It can be really intimidating. Full disclosure, I'm naturally scared of the dark. And so when I go into these cave spaces to do this kind of work, it takes a lot for me to do that. But I come out much more clear and much more aligned and much more confident in my positions, because I know that is truly me at the core of my practice and my purpose and what I should be doing. I also meditate a lot and use those moments of stillness where I'm in that fluid state with my surroundings. It feels like I'm sort of one with the air and one with the particles, and I'm in this, again, liminal state where I'm just kind of floating in the in-between and trying to plan out, where is my destination, where am I going, who do I want to invite into the space to work with, what energies do I want to sort through right now, because that's where I find the clearest communication with my inner self, as well as any spirits or deities or energies. So in future episodes, this was meant as sort of a high-level discussion, give me a little more practice podcasting as well, to be honest, because it's only my first real episode. I'm going to dig more into the details of working with liminal energies, give some tips for doing some deep meditations and journey work, and really get into how to embrace the power of transformation. So hopefully my ramblings made sense, and I really appreciate that you tuned in. Coming up, episode 2, I'm going to discuss the magic of the month of February. February itself is a liminal month. It sits between winter and spring in the Northern Hemisphere. There's a lot of change happening beneath the surface. We can't see it, obviously, but, we feel the potential of it happening and sort of revving up for spring. So I'm going to discuss how to work with those energies and how it's a really powerful month to prepare for spring. So thank you again for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Until next time, embrace the thresholds, trust the in-between, and remember, your magic is always yours to define.